So far we have understood how the contract is formed. Now the next important step is to understand how a contract is performed. Now this brings to our next important concept under Indian Contract Act, that is performance of a contract. When the parties to a contract fulfill their respective promises, the contract is said to be performed. In simple words, a contract is not made just to exist on papers. It is made to be carried out. Example, A agrees to sell his car to B for rupees 3 lakhs. A delivers the car, B pays the money. Here, both the parties have fulfilled their promises and the contract is said to be performed. Now, let's understand the different types of performance. Under the Act, performance are of two types. One is actual performance and the other is attempted performance. Let's understand about actual performance. Actual performance means when both the parties have actually carried out their promises. Example, A delivers the goods to B and B makes the payment to A. Now both the sides have performed and the contract comes to an end. Why? Because the contract is said to be performed. Now let's move on to attempted performance. Sometimes a party offers to perform his promise, but the other party refuses to accept this. Now such things are known as attempted performance or also called as tender of performance. Let's understand this with an example. Let's say A agrees to deliver goods to B on 10th June. Now A goes to B on 10th June with the goods, but B refuses to accept the delivery because he is not in station. Therefore, here A has already attempted to perform his obligation and A is not responsible for non-performance and therefore A is discharged from his liability to deliver the goods. Now this is a classic example to understand attempted performance or tender of performance. Very common example in your day-to-day life is when you do an online purchase. Let's say you purchase something from Myntra and he comes to deliver the goods to you at your house, and if you're not at house, you tell him you come on a later date. Now this is what is known as attempted performance. So ideally the Myntra guy is discharged of his liability to deliver because when he made the attempt to deliver the goods to you, you have refused to accept the delivery. Now that is what is known as attempted performance. For attempted performance to be valid, certain conditions must be satisfied. That is, tender must be unconditional. That means the offer to perform should not come with conditions. What does that mean? I will deliver the goods only if you pay extra. Does that amount to a valid tender? Absolutely no. There cannot be any conditions attached to such performance. Second, the tender must be at proper time and place. The performance must be offered at the agreed time and at the agreed place. Otherwise, it will not be treated as a valid performance. So, in our previous example, A had agreed to deliver the goods to B on 10th June. So therefore A is supposed to go on 10th June itself and at the place which it was agreed to be delivered. He cannot go on a different time or a different date or to a different place and then say he has attempted the performance. Next, with regard to tender must be of whole obligation. What does this mean? Partial performance is not sufficient. Let's understand this with an example. If A agrees to deliver 100 units Offering only 50 units is not a valid tender. Next, tender must be made to the proper person. Performance must be offered to the promisee or an authorized agent. The next essential element is that tender must be made in a proper manner. That means if the contract specifies a manner of performance, it must be followed. Then only it amounts to a valid attempted performance. Now let us understand who is legally allowed to perform a contract. First of all, the promisor himself. As a general rule, a contract must be performed by the promisor personally, especially when personal skill or qualification is involved. Example, let's say a famous singer agrees to perform at an event. Now, she cannot send someone on behalf of her in that place to perform in that event. Why? Because here the singer's personal skill is involved. Therefore, in such a case, the promiser himself or herself should only perform the contract and nobody else. Personal performance is not essential. The promiser may perform through an agent. Example, delivery of goods or payment of money, etc. An agent can be appointed and it's not necessary that the promiser himself does the performance. Now, in case of death of the promiser, the legal representative must perform the duties or obligations of the promiser only to the extent of inherited property. Personal skill contracts cannot be performed by legal representatives. When two or more persons make a joint promise, all must perform jointly unless the contract provides otherwise. And if the promisee accepts performance from a third person, the promiser is discharged of his liabilities and promisee cannot later enforce it against the promiser. A joint promiser who pays more than his share can recover proportionate contribution from others. And also, releasing one joint promiser does not discharge others unless expressly agreed. And when a promise is made to two or more persons jointly, all joint promisees must claim performance together. After death, the right passes to the legal representatives jointly. One promisee alone cannot enforce the contract unless authorized. Now, let's simplify the concept of time and place of performance. So, whenever the time is specified in the contract, performance must be done on the agreed date during the business hours and at the proper place. And when no time is specified, performance must be done within a reasonable time. Now, what is reasonable depends on the nature of contract, usage of trade, and circumstances of the case. Therefore, to summarize this entire session, we have clearly understood what performance of a contract means, what are the different types of performance, that is actual performance and attempted performance, and we have also seen what essential elements are required to qualify as a valid attempted performance. And then we also understood who can perform a contract and the liability of joint promisers and promisees, and also the importance of time and place of performance. With this, we now know how contracts operate in real life and not just the theory. In the next part, we will move one step forward and understand how contracts come to an end through discharge of contract and its various modes. Till then, revise these topics carefully because these topics are definitely important to understand the remaining topics in Indian Contract Act.